Hello, and welcome to The Unseen Question. Religion has always carried with it claims that are said to be beyond questioning, untouchable truths that people are expected to accept without hesitation. Islam is no exception. In fact, when you look closely at many of its core ideas, what you find is not timeless wisdom but beliefs that are often deeply irrational, outdated, or even harmful in practice. What makes these beliefs stand out is not only that they are presented as divine, but that millions continue to build their lives and societies around them. And when something has such power over individuals and entire cultures, it deserves careful scrutiny. Today, we'll explore 14 beliefs that are often taken for granted inside Islam, but when examined with reason and evidence, turn out to be some of the most foolish ideas ever promoted as sacred truth. The first is the belief in a perfect eternal book. The Quran is said to be the literal word of God, preserved without error, flawless in every sense. Yet anyone who has actually read it without blind devotion can see that it is full of contradictions, historical inaccuracies, and vague language. It borrows heavily from earlier Jewish and Christian stories, often retelling them with mistakes or embellishments. For example, the Quran refers to Pharaoh's army being drowned in pursuit of Moses, but also says Pharaoh was saved. It speaks of mountains as pegs holding down the earth, which reflects ancient cosmology, not reality. The idea that this text is perfect collapses under even mild critical reading. But believers are told to accept that perfection on faith alone. Then there is the belief that angels and jinn constantly interact with the world. Angels recording every deed, jinn living alongside humans, sometimes possessing them, sometimes whispering temptations. These are claims without a shred of evidence, yet they are treated as unquestionable facts. The belief in jinn, in particular, has fueled exorcisms, superstition, and even violence against people who suffer from mental illness. A modern world with neuroscience, psychiatry, and medicine should have no place for invisible beings blamed for seizures or depression. Yet in many Islamic societies, these beliefs still guide how people treat the vulnerable. Another deeply problematic belief is that apostasy, leaving the religion, is a crime worthy of death. It is rooted in hadiths that declare those who abandon Islam should be executed. This has had devastating effects. Millions live in fear, hiding their true thoughts because they know leaving publicly could mean losing their family, their freedom, or even their life. Such a rule shows how fragile the religion is. If it truly had truth on its side, it wouldn't need threats of death to keep people from walking away. Closely connected is the belief that blasphemy, criticizing or mocking the religion, is unforgivable and deserves punishment, sometimes death. In countries like Pakistan, entire lives are destroyed by blasphemy accusations, often with little or no evidence. This creates a culture of fear, where people censor themselves and even academic discussion becomes dangerous. What kind of truth needs laws to protect it from being questioned? The belief in heaven and hell is another example. Islam teaches that human beings will spend eternity in one of two places, but the criteria for entry often come down not to good deeds, but to belief itself. Someone who doubts the religion, no matter how moral they are, is condemned to hell. Meanwhile, a believer who prays and fasts but may act unjustly is promised paradise if God forgives them. This turns morality into blind obedience rather than real compassion or justice. It reduces ethics to following rituals and dogma instead of genuinely improving the human condition. There is also the belief that women are spiritually equal to men but socially inferior. The Quran and Hadiths repeatedly assign women a second-class status. Their testimony in court is worth half that of a man. They are told to cover themselves to prevent temptation. Husbands are granted the right to discipline wives, sometimes interpreted as physical striking. These rules have contributed to systemic inequality across many Muslim-majority societies. And when challenged, defenders point back to divine authority, as though sexism becomes acceptable when stamped with the label of God. Another widely accepted belief is that the world was created in 6 days by Allah, who shaped the heavens and the earth as described in the Quran. This clashes directly with modern cosmology, geology, and evolutionary biology. The scientific evidence for a universe billions of years old and for life evolving gradually over time is overwhelming. Yet millions are taught that questioning the Quranic version is disbelief. Entire generations are raised with a false conflict between faith and evidence, making it harder for them to embrace science fully. Another belief that highlights the problem is the idea that the Quran contains scientific miracles. Defenders of the religion point to verses about embryos, the oceans, or the shape of the earth, and claim these prove divine knowledge. Yet when looked at carefully, these verses are vague, poetic, or simply wrong. For example, the description of embryology in the Quran says humans are created from a clot of blood, That is not accurate science. It is a reflection of what people thought in the 7th century. Apologists retroactively reinterpret verses to match modern discoveries, but the text itself shows no special knowledge. If anything, the need to twist verses to fit science proves the book does not contain it. Then there is the belief in predestination and divine will. On one hand, Islam teaches that everything is preordained by God. On the other hand, it insists humans are responsible for their actions and will be judged. These two claims directly contradict one another. If every choice is already written, then punishment and reward make no sense. If free will is real, then divine predestination collapses. This tension has led to centuries of debate, but no resolution because the idea itself is incoherent. Believers are told both things at once and expected not to notice the contradiction. A related idea is that prayer can change the course of reality. Muslims are taught to bow 5 times a day, reciting verses, asking for guidance or help. But if God already has everything written in his eternal plan, then prayer is meaningless. If prayer can change fate, then fate is not fixed. Either way, the idea collapses, and yet billions of hours of human life are spent each year in ritual words and movements that accomplish nothing outside of psychological comfort. That comfort is real, but it doesn't change reality, and it certainly doesn't prove divine listening. Another belief is that the Kaaba in Mecca is the holiest place on earth, and that facing it in prayer links every Muslim across the globe. But when you look at it objectively, it is a cube of stone said to be built around a meteorite. Pilgrims circle it, kiss it, and revere it as sacred, but it's no more special than any other rock on earth. Its importance exists only because people are told to treat it as holy. Remove the belief, and it is just a structure in the desert. The fact that millions treat it as the center of the universe says more about human psychology than about divine truth. The obsession with ritual purity is another example. Rules about washing before prayer, avoiding pork, abstaining from alcohol, and countless other restrictions dominate daily life. These rules are not based on evidence of health or morality, but on arbitrary commands. Pork is banned not because it is inherently evil, but because ancient tribes considered it unclean. Alcohol is forbidden because intoxication was seen as disruptive. These may have had some pragmatic value in early societies, but treating them as eternal, cosmic truths is absurd. People are still judged, sometimes harshly, not for harming others, but for eating the wrong food or drinking the wrong liquid. A particularly harmful belief is the idea of divine reward for martyrdom. The claim that dying in the name of Islam guarantees paradise, often with promises of pleasure, has been one of the most destructive concepts in modern times. It has motivated suicide bombers, fueled extremist movements, and justified wars. While most Muslims reject terrorism, the underlying belief in martyrdom as a sacred reward is still widely held. It shows how dangerous religious promises can be when tied to violence. Turning death into a ticket to heaven devalues human life and encourages fanaticism. Another foolish idea is that suffering in this world is a test from God. When tragedy strikes, an earthquake, a disease, or the death of a child, believers are told it is part of a divine test. This shifts attention away from real causes and solutions. Instead of demanding better healthcare, infrastructure, or scientific research, people are taught to accept disasters as God's will. This mindset normalizes suffering and prevents progress. It creates resignation where there should be action. Human beings have the power to reduce suffering, but religious fatalism tells them to endure it rather than solve it. The idea that morality requires God is another central belief. Islam teaches that without divine law, humans cannot know right from wrong. But history and psychology show the opposite. Compassion, cooperation, and fairness are rooted in human evolution and social needs, not divine decree. In fact, many Quranic laws are less moral than human conscience. Slavery is permitted, polygamy is normalized, harsh punishments like stoning or amputation are prescribed. These are not higher ethics. They are outdated tribal rules preserved by religion. True morality comes from empathy, reason, and evidence, not ancient texts. Another common belief is that the Quran is written in such perfect Arabic that no human could have produced it. This claim of linguistic miracle has been repeated for centuries, but it doesn't hold up under scrutiny. The Quran is written in early classical Arabic, with grammatical irregularities, borrowed expressions, and even foreign words. Its style may be poetic to some ears, but calling it inimitable is subjective. Plenty of later Arabic literature is more refined and coherent. The idea that language itself proves divinity is not evidence, it is opinion, and it relies on believers already accepting the claim before hearing the text. The belief in literal miracles is another stumbling block. Stories of the prophet splitting the moon, water flowing from his fingers, or trees obeying him are still taught as factual, yet not a shred of evidence exists outside of religious tradition. If the moon had actually split in two, it would have been recorded by civilizations across the globe. The fact that it only appears in Islamic sources tells you exactly what it is: legend, not history. But these miracle stories are used to bolster faith and silence questions, even though they collapse under basic logic. One of the more damaging beliefs is that Islam, by definition, is a religion of peace. While it does contain teachings about peace, it also contains countless verses endorsing violence, conquest, and punishment. The Quran and Hadiths speak openly of fighting unbelievers, spreading the faith through power, and enforcing harsh laws. The idea that this religion is uniquely peaceful is contradicted by both its texts and its history. Of course, many Muslims interpret their faith in peaceful ways, but that doesn't erase the fact that the foundation contains violence. Pretending otherwise only fuels denial and prevents honest reform. Another foolish concept is that the Sharia, Islamic law, is a divine system of justice. In reality, it is a collection of medieval rules about prayer, diet, contracts, punishments, and social hierarchy. Far from being divine justice, it enforces inequality, harsh penalties, and outdated practices. Theft can mean losing a hand. Adultery can mean being stoned. Homosexuality can mean death. These are not laws based on evidence or fairness, but on ancient tribal customs sanctified by religion. Elevating them to eternal law only guarantees that societies remain trapped in the past. The belief in the superiority of Arabic itself also reveals the absurdity of religious thinking. Muslims are told that prayers and scripture must be in Arabic for them to truly count. This implies that God, who supposedly created all languages, only favors one. For billions who do not speak Arabic, this turns worship into memorized sounds without understanding. It also reinforces cultural dominance, as Arab traditions become seen as more authentic than others. A universal God should not have a linguistic preference, but a man-made religion rooted in a specific culture naturally does. Another belief that demands attention is the idea that Islam provides a complete system for every aspect of life. From politics to economics to family matters, believers are told the religion has all the answers. But when you look at the supposed guidance, it is filled with ambiguity, contradictions, and impracticality. Modern banking, medicine, technology, and governance all function in ways that the Quran and Hadith could never anticipate. Forcing a 7th century framework onto a 21st century world creates endless problems. Claims of complete guidance only work if people cherry-pick, reinterpret, or outright ignore the inconvenient parts. The concept of eternal punishment in hell also reveals the irrationality of the system. A finite human life, often filled with circumstances beyond one's control, supposedly leads to an infinite sentence of torture for those who disbelieve. This is not justice, it is cruelty. No human court would hand out infinite punishment for finite crimes. Yet religious believers accept it as divine fairness. At the same time, heaven is portrayed as a place of eternal pleasure, with gardens, rivers, and rewards. These ideas reflect human imagination, not cosmic truth. They are wish-fulfillment fantasies and threats, designed to control behavior. Finally, there is the belief that questioning or doubting these teachings is dangerous, even sinful. Islam, like many religions, tries to shield itself from criticism by labeling doubt as weakness or rebellion. But doubt is the natural result of curiosity and reason. If the beliefs could truly withstand scrutiny, there would be no need to forbid questioning. The fact that doubt is punished only shows that the system cannot survive without silencing its critics. Altogether, these beliefs about holy books, supernatural beings, predestination, rituals, miracles, morality, and punishment form a framework that asks people to abandon reason in favor of obedience. They may offer comfort or identity, but they fail when measured against evidence, logic, and human well-being. Religion thrives when people accept without questioning, but progress depends on the opposite, on asking, challenging, and demanding evidence. The more we look at these beliefs with open eyes, the more we see them for what they are, not eternal truths, but human inventions, frozen in time, demanding loyalty instead of understanding. When you step back and view all of these beliefs together, a pattern becomes impossible to ignore. They aren't rooted in timeless truth, but in the fears, limitations, and imaginations of the people who first wrote them down. Invisible beings watching human behavior, arbitrary dietary rules treated as cosmic law, a cube of stone turned into the axis of human devotion, promises of eternal pleasure or eternal pain based on whether you believed in the right way. These are not the products of an all-knowing mind. They are the products of human culture trying to explain the world with the tools it had available. The tragedy is not just that these ideas exist, but that they are enforced with such intensity. Billions of people are raised to see them as unquestionable, Education systems in many countries teach them as facts, while suppressing alternative perspectives. Questioning them openly can cost someone their family, their job, or even their life. And yet, despite all the intimidation and fear, more people than ever are quietly realizing the cracks in the foundation. In societies where freedom of thought is more protected, many have already recognized the problems and walked away. In more restrictive societies, growing numbers still carry questions in private. The internet has made it harder than ever to seal off belief systems from scrutiny. People can compare stories, analyze contradictions, and access information that used to be forbidden. And once you start asking questions, it becomes harder and harder to silence them. What becomes clear is that clinging to these beliefs is not harmless. It shapes politics, law, education, and daily life. It controls what people wear, what they eat, how they think about women, how they respond to science, and how they treat those who disagree. These ideas aren't just personal choices, they ripple outward, influencing entire societies. When irrational beliefs guide laws, human rights are compromised. When myths are treated as facts, science is stunted. When unquestionable dogmas govern morality, injustice thrives. But it doesn't have to stay that way. The human capacity for reason, empathy, and progress has always been stronger than the chains of dogma. Every society that has embraced open questioning, evidence, and human-centered values has advanced in knowledge and well-being. People live freer, healthier, and more fulfilling lives when they are not forced to obey ancient rules that no longer serve them. The story of human progress is the story of letting go of outdated beliefs and replacing them with better ideas. Looking at the 14 beliefs we've explored, the foolishness is obvious once the spell of reverence is broken. A perfect book that contradicts itself, supernatural beings with no evidence, laws that punish doubt and reward blind obedience, a God who demands worship yet supposedly wrote the entire script of existence. These aren't profound truths, they are illusions, and illusions only hold power when people mistake them for reality. Breaking free from them doesn't mean abandoning meaning. It means building meaning on foundations that are real. Human relationships, knowledge, art, discovery, compassion. These are not fragile ideas that collapse under scrutiny. They grow stronger the more we explore them. Unlike dogma, they don't demand silence. They invite questions. The more openly we talk about these issues, the more courage others will find to question them as well. Because the truth doesn't need protection. Only lies and illusions do. And when enough people begin to see these beliefs for what they really are, the hold they have on humanity will finally begin to weaken.